NWA back into the spotlight.
I was thinking that it might be a good idea if you and I formed an alliance.
Let's get ready to rumble! Welcome to the greatest wrestling program in the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? Stop what you're doing and listen.
The Alliance Guys podcast with your hosts Kevin Frazier, DKM, and J Cal.
Welcome. This is the Alliance Guys podcast, our presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance and the United Wrestling Network. And that's my pal right over here. That's DKM. He's my buddy, and I'm your buddy. My name is J Cal, and again, we're here to talk NWA with you folks. And it's been a week. DK, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, it's been a week, all right. I'm doing all things considered rather well. I believe computers are the spawn of Satan himself and should all burn in hell. But outside of that,
not too bad.
Not too bad.
You? Computers have not been the spawn of Satan for me. In fact, I've enjoyed my computer and enjoy the computers that I do use. And if you guys are enjoying this presentation, if you guys like this podcast, make sure you support it by giving us a thumbs up, a follow, a subscription, a like, all that fun stuff. Right now, we're broadcasting live via YouTube. We're on twitch.tv and on Facebook. So if you have comments that you want to make throughout the show, if you feel like joining in the conversation, just go ahead and put those comments there. If we catch them, we're going to highlight them and talk about them, because that's what we do here. We create a community, whether it's just DK and myself, or sometimes we're joined by Kevin Frazier and sometimes even Jaden. We like to talk about wrestling. We like to talk about the NWA. You guys are definitely part of that. I already see a couple of folks in the chat room. Dave Scooby's in the house. Terry McDermott is here. And for anyone else watching, thank you for being a part of this today. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about By Any Means Necessary 2, Part 2, night. It's still part of the same show, but the second presentation, which was put out on FITE TV this past Tuesday at 6:05 Eastern as this week's version of NWA POWERRR. We'll recap that in a moment. A couple of things have been late breaking news. This was just handed to me. So we do have a price point now for the pay-per-view for December 4th. DK, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. Hard Times 2, originating from Atlanta, Georgia, and the Georgia Public Broadcasting Studios, has a price tag associated with it. Have you heard the price yet, DK?
Is it $24.99 or something like that?
$24.99. Now, this is a little bit more expensive than the past pay-per-views, especially the ones that have been emanating out of that GPS Studios, because typically, they've been about $19.99, so there has been an increase in the price. Does this trouble you, DK? Do you find this offensive? Does this bother you, or are you okay with it?
Really, I think some of it's got thrown off because the last time there were two pay-per-views, and so if you bought them both in a package, it was a little bit cheaper. But really, last time both pay-per-views were the same price if you bought them separate. So it's not really an increase from last time. It's an increase from the time before that.
And
does it bother me? No, I think it's still reasonable. I mean, obviously, like everybody, I'd rather pay less than more. But, considering how much money I put in my gas tank, this is almost a bargain. And I got a small car with a small gas tank. So who knows what you're paying out there in California.
So my wife, for Father's Day, for my birthday, whatever you want to call it, we had a new addition to the family. I'm now driving a 2021 Chevy Colorado. It's a beautiful truck. I love it. So far it's been great. Every time I go to the gas station to fill it up, it's $72. And that's every time, every single time. So It is a bit of a chore, but
see, take a week off and you can buy about 3 NWA pay-per-views. So
exactly. Shaw Mega joined us in the house. Like I said, we've got Terry McDermott, Dave Scooby, and then of course, if you're watching and just prefer to watch, that's cool too. But feel free to join in the conversation. Again, this is a community. We do appreciate everyone's 2 cents, and we're here to talk NWA. That's what we do. Personally, I'm not too turned off by the price tag of the pay-per-view, especially if it means we're going to see, and this is just speculation, no one has said anything yet, but with the recent additions to the roster that we saw at By Any Means Necessary, if we're going to have a Matt Taven or Michael Bennett on these cards going forward, I'm almost okay with that $5 price increase, because if you're bringing in a better talent pool, then I would expect that the prices would go up anyway. So I'm not horribly concerned about that price tag.
And I think really, if they put out the same product, I would say $25 probably about the right value for what they've been putting out. Yeah, you get used to the lower prices, but I think that was kind of getting people back from the pandemic and everything like that. Like I said, the last ones, this is what they were if you were just buying the pay-per-view. So, if they went up to $30, I'd probably start going, now you better start giving me more. And that being said, their pay-per-views are much better than their show.
And that's, I mean, I guess it's easy to book one show and have it be consistent, but it seems like with every season of Power leading up to a pay-per-view, you would imagine, you would assume, you would think that there would have to be some sort of consistency all across the board. But I have to agree with you, where I think that pay-per-views have very much outperformed what you'd get from an episode of Power. And it's not the wrestling in the matches, it's just the overall continuity and the storytelling that you would get from the TV versus the pay-per-view. And the payoffs have been pretty generous. I mean, the only pay-per-view that I didn't enjoy immensely this year was Back for the Attack, and I just felt like that pay-per-view was rushed too quickly. I didn't feel like it did a good job telling us any stories, really.
Yeah, part was because there wasn't really anything to it. Now, I have a question for you, since we're actually talking about this. I don't know the answer. I don't know that you know the answer.
Sure.
But has there been any type of announcement what the plans are for the next few weeks before the pay-per-view? I'm assuming they'll take the week of Thanksgiving off.
I'm not entirely sure.
But that leaves 2 weeks. And I suppose like the one before the pay-per-view will be a recap show.
What I've been told, what it's been hinted at me, is that there's still more matches that were filmed in St. Louis that haven't made TV yet. And I know that they had
St. Louis.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, one of the benefits of being in St. Louis, and they did all the tapings, and we saw a lot of those matches that aired without an audience. It seems like to me that camera was basically rolling from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, and they were putting in matches whenever they could fit in matches. And if that meant there was no audience, so be it. The benefit of that was we got a lot less filler episodes. Even if the matches didn't exactly gel with the stories that were being told, we had actual matches, where in the past, they would have a power surge with maybe one match. This time around, our power surges have been chocked with wrestling matches. So there is a trade-off. There is some good versus bad, but I mean, the last go around, we did get the power surge. We did get that Tim Storm versus Tom Latimer match that was pretty solid. So I would imagine they have a few more of those in the can, but I don't think there's anything else from Kentucky. So I think they do go back to St. Louis. And then, of course, I think the week leading up to the pay-per-view will just be a recap show.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible they'll only need to produce for 1 week. It's almost like if they did that, they should have just delayed by any means necessary by another week.
I think that might, like, the whole pacing, right? That's the one thing we have to talk about. I think that would have been a good idea. You know, I think they did not execute quickly enough for the Empower television show. And then I think they executed too quickly for By Any Means Necessary. But with that being said, you know, By Any Means Necessary, it kind of introduced a new player to the show, actually several new players to the show, which could help shape that card for December 4th. But again, it's like, unless they're going to retcon some of this stuff in St. Louis, I don't know how they're going to really pay all that off.
Yeah, I don't either. And of course, you know, a lot of times for pay-per-views are more thrown together than anything. Since they don't do a lot of build.
Right.
Hey, you brought up the Empower episode. So, what are your thoughts on Nick Khan apparently deciding to open his mouth about the fact that he paid for the AEW talent on Empower? And first of all, that shouldn't surprise anybody. That is not an uncommon thing when groups work together, that you pay for your own talent. And second of all, he was responding to that when, what's the name of that interviewer? Girl, I think it was. I can't remember. Sorry, people. Somebody may know it in the chat. But basically, he was being asked if AEW was going to put on an all women's pay-per-view. Let's be honest, AEW, I think so. Yes, I think you're right. And AEW, the biggest criticism they get from their own fans, you know, hardcore fans, is that, you know, they were promised a vibrant women's division, and quite frankly, they've sucked at it. And even though they have some pretty talented lady wrestlers. And so I guess Nick Khan got annoyed, cut off the question, and basically was saying, well, it hasn't been said enough. You know, the NWA hasn't said enough that, you know, I paid for my talent. I was once. So it's like, what? You put on the pay-per-view? Dude, that's not uncommon. So just wondering what you thought of that. It kind of seemed like a little hissy fit to me.
So I've heard people refer to Tony Khan as, like, you know, it's basically he's running his own e-fed, or, you know, he's playing with the action figures. And a lot of the booking that he does, a lot of the show that he does, I mean, I could probably tell you there's some of the same concepts that I would probably put together if I was running a wrestling show. And it's not that I don't think that he puts on a good product, and I know he has very good intentions to putting on a great wrestling product. But as far as I know, his qualifications to being a wrestling owner, it basically comes with a checkbook. I mean, I don't know how much experiences he had in booking wrestling before this. I don't know how much experience he has in the world of professional wrestling before this, except for he's been financing AEW and has the wherewithal to kind of call it as he wants it to be. I mean, he's even taken away the power of the rest of the executive vice presidents, that they still have that position in name and name only. So it doesn't surprise me that he's going to be quick to point out where, like, well, he's not getting the credit, because keep in mind too, his fan base is very rabid right now. That AEW, the hardcore AEW fans, are very rabid and very protective of their product. It's similar to the way that the hardcore WWE fans are very protective of their product, and it's become somewhat of this tribalism, you know, it's us versus them type thing. And then when Tony says, like, well, I opened up the forbidden door, like, let's be honest, Tony didn't open up that forbidden door. That door's been opening and closing for lots of wrestling promoters over the years. You know, when that a true forbidden door would be the moment that John Cena representing the WWE or Roman Reigns representing the WWE comes into AEW to have a match. That's when the forbidden door has really been opened. Until
and
that,
let's remember the forbidden door was New Japan. They're the ones that shut it. They're the ones that didn't want to do business with him. So, I mean, so if somebody opened it, it was them.
Yeah. I mean,
and I hate that term anyway.
That's a good point too. But I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't surprise me that he doesn't understand the nuances of professional wrestling. It doesn't surprise me that, you know, he feels like he deserves more credit than he has received. Now, I mean, when you talk about that Empower pay-per-view, everyone says Mickie James, you know, look at what Mickie James did. But let's be honest, like, Mickie James might have put the legwork in, but it was Billy Corgan's platform that was given to her. And you don't hear a lot of people saying, look at what Billy Corgan did. Look at Billy Corgan's Empower pay-per-view. All the credit keeps going back to Mickie James, and probably rightfully so, because she's, you know, from what my understanding is, she's the one that got the talents involved. She's the one that had some of the negotiations with Impact. So, you know, you don't hear Billy Corgan, you know, saying, hey, look at me. I put on this women's pay-per-view. That's one thing. And then the other thing too is if you watch the pay-per-view, if you literally watch it till the end, when it rolls credits, there are no credits. So you don't see executive produced by Billy Corgan. You don't hear special thanks to Tony Khan and AEW or special thanks to Scott D'Amore and Impact Wrestling. Like, nobody's acknowledged. It doesn't acknowledge anybody. It says Grown Ass Woman by Mickie James and the few other artists that help her write that song. What I'm trying to say is that show didn't really pay homage to anybody. It didn't credit really anybody. And the fans have kind of latched on to Mickie James as the one that made that show happen. But, I mean, look, that venue, that platform was created by Billy Corgan. You don't hear him talking about how he should be getting more credit than Mickie James. So with that being said, it does seem kind of like a whiny little bitch move, and part of my French, but it's the first time that I've really thought, like, geez, Tony, like, you're really showing your colors here. Like, if you didn't want your women to appear, you could have not had them on it. And I'll be perfectly honest, I don't know how much different that pay-per-view would be if it didn't have AEW talent. You know,
well,
you could have
I almost think it may have been a little bit better because since they were there and he was the one paying, they probably got more victories than I thought they should have.
Well, I know Sahara 7. Well, I don't even know. I assume Sahara 7 is under some sort of AEW contract. I assume that Killian King is under some sort of AEW contract. But outside of that, like, the Free Babes aren't under contract to anybody. You know, the Team Hex was a product of the NWA. Chelsea Green is not under contract to AEW. One of the best matches on the card was Deonna Purrazzo and Melina, and it had nothing to do with AEW. So, you know, Tony, sure, you helped out. Good job, brother. We know that the AEW talent was there. Why do you want credit for that?
I don't know. I just kind of read it within the last hour, and it was just like, what in the world? And it just,
well, what's interesting, and I don't ever want to send my audience away somewhere else, but Ella J, who is the one that interviewed Tony Khan, retweeted another person who is hosting a space on Twitter later tonight with the hashtag Women's Wrestling Matters, with the title of Confusion. And the person, Suddenly Susan, said, I'm going to be hosting a space later. It's a chance to uplift those working behind the scenes and, to discuss the disparaging remarks of Tony Khan. So, I mean, I think there's going to be some genuine blowback for Tony Khan for this. And I mean, I hate that there's controversy surrounding anything that's positive in wrestling. But again, shut up, Tony. Shut up. You're literally on Busted Open Radio like twice a week, almost every week. It's technically free advertising for you. Shut up. How much credit do you need? You're not the savior of pro wrestling, man. You're putting on what many people believe an excellent wrestling promotion. Take those accolades and just keep moving forward.
But not that many.
No.
I mean, look, let's be honest. AEW's been around, what, 2 years? Is it 2?
It's going on 2 years right now, yeah.
Yeah, and basically, their last couple of weeks of ratings have been about what they would have been if they hadn't been facing NXT at the beginning. Because, they're around 900,000 or just under 900,000 or something like that. So it's not, sorry, they haven't really grown. They haven't really grown at all. And, the Punk return was, of course, a big hot shot, and Danielson return was a big hot shot, and Adam Cole was a small hot shot. Sorry, I still don't know that Adam Cole was somebody who was known by a majority of wrestling fans on the planet. And so, yeah, just, they can do things to spike ratings, but they haven't been able to maintain any new people that they bring in to watch these shows. So,
and I saw something, and I didn't pay enough attention to it, but I saw something where it looks like the WWE ratings are on the rise, even after casting off in the last 2 years 171 wrestlers and staff members, that it's actually growing its audience right now, which I mean, doesn't surprise me, but it's kind of funny how so many people swore off the product. Oh, you let so-and-so go, that's it, I'm done. You let so-and-so go, I'm never watching it again. But the numbers continue to rise, proving that McMahon knows more about pro wrestling than most of us think.
Well, SmackDown's been going up. Raw's still kind of tanking, but Raw sucks. And SmackDown does too. And, I'll be honest, I've gotten to the point now, I don't enjoy those shows, so I get my information in one of two ways. If there's something that I think will be interesting on the show, I'll record it, and I'll watch the part that I think will be interesting. Or I just get the recap the next day off of another podcast. Or actually, they're even less of a podcast now. They're a news channel, all sorts of big things. And, that's kind of where I get my information. And it's just, man, a lot of people, even Jay here, will talk about how, hey, wrestling may be in a high spot. I still haven't bought that.
I'll be the first one to admit that ratings in terms of popularity, wrestling in terms of popularity, is not where it was. I mean, during the Attitude Era, and then you look back in those old school days that you're so Kevin accuses you of being so enamored with, back in the 80s. And in Los Angeles, they're selling out the Grand Olympic Auditorium. In Atlanta, they're selling out the Omni. And in all, the Sportatorium is being sold out. And these shows are drawing, thousands of people to these events. And, I think wrestling was a lot more popular back then, when you could put a wrestling show on a Tuesday night and sell out the venue, as opposed to tonight when you're taping Monday Night Raw and you're having difficulty filling out a 6,000 seat venue.
Jim Cornette did something recently. If you go to his YouTube channel, you guys can probably find it, but where he's talking about how promoters make money. And specifically, he's talking about how they did it on spot shows. And for those of you who don't know what a spot show is specifically, a spot show was not a regular town that you run, typically a small one, and you go once, maybe twice a year, but more likely once. And so you could draw easily 2,000 fans, because these were people that they didn't get to see it live very often, and they didn't get to buy the merchandise very often. So they would, you could, and they would do it normally in sponsorship with, like the school football team or somebody who wanted to earn some money. And he gets into some of that. And of course, back in those days, everything was cash. So he talked about how they might even skim so much. But, there were typically 2 or 3 spot shows during a week, and for promotions that had more than one team going out, because spot shows were, you might have 5 matches, and you probably have repeat people, like tag teams that wrestled in singles matches, then a tag match, or something. And you tell me an independent that can go around draw $2,000 or 2,000 fans, nowadays. And this was happening in every promotion across the country that did spot shows. AWA, WWF didn't really do them, but almost every other territory did. And so, and actually sell $2,000 worth of tickets. You'll get some promotions, they'll go, oh, well, we had 1,000 people, until you find out the building has a capacity of 750. And then the next thing they'll tell you is that they don't tell you is that, oh, but we actually, gave away half the tickets to sponsors who just gave them to whoever for whatever reason.
Right.
So, yeah, you can't do that today. It's not going to happen, and I don't think wrestling is as popular. Well, here's the thing. I know it's not as popular as it used to be. Kevin can talk about Devin in the days of the '80s. Anybody who was part of a wrestling promotion in the '80s, that's what they did. They wrestled anywhere from 5 to 8 times a week. And that was their only job. And that was across the country. So, you tell me how many people are making their living off wrestling where they're actually, paying bills and not mooching off a friend or wife or something like that.
One thing, and I had this up here for a while, I did want to talk about it, is Chris Drummond said, could the Thunder Rosa rift be the issue with AEW and the NWA? And to answer that, I'm going to say no. I don't think that's the issue at all, because it's part of the deal that the NWA made with AEW to have some of that talent was based on the fact that they were allowing Thunder Rosa out of her contract. Now, I'm not sure all the details, and even if Brian was here, Brian Rosa was in the chat, I'm sure he wouldn't spill all the tea when it comes to that information, because it's just private. It's not for consumption. But there's obviously a reason why Thunder Rosa did the job to Camille. Then Thunder Rosa went to Impact Wrestling as a favor to Impact before she showed up on AEW. I mean, look, by rights, Thunder Rosa was supposed to be under contract until the end of December. They got her 2 months early. I'm sure there was some things that the NWA received for that, and I'm sure that there was some extra benefit for AEW. And I think I would venture to guess, I'm not privy, I would venture to guess that some of the talent appeared on that Empower pay-per-view because of the generosity, that's not the right word, but because the NWA allowed Thunder Rosa out of her deal.
Well, I mean, it was likely part of the payment.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
Go ahead. You go ahead, DK.
I was gonna say that was part of the pro or whatever that phrase is.
Terry McDermott says he'll give Billy Corgan that much credit. He does not show off like a lot of sports owners that like to do. Yeah, I mean, we don't see. Yes, Billy Corgan is the center of attention when it comes to a pay-per-view. Rolling Stone will do an article about the Smashing Pumpkins or about Billy Corgan, and they'll talk about his pro wrestling side project. But that's just good publicity. That's just a good way of garnering attention for the brand, especially when you have pay-per-views coming up. But I mean, you don't you don't see Billy Corgan appearing on every single wrestling related podcast or forum to put over the NWA. He kind of just allows the NWA to exist. Like I said, when it comes to a pay-per-view, yeah, they do take advantage of his celebrity, but he's not out there all the time doing that. And I'm not trying to poo-poo too much on Tony Khan for getting himself out there. I really feel like that's good for anybody who has a business, is trying to get that people to watch that business, to interact with that brand. But you don't see Billy Corgan doing that too often. And then James H. Jackson says he just wants them to bring back the WCW 100 hotline. And
900.
What did I say?
100, I think.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, then I think it was 900 909 9900. I think that's what it was. Yeah, thank you, Gene.
You would know, that scares me.
No, the commercials, Gene, I never called that number. My parents would have killed me, but Gene Okerlund would always say, hey, tune into this number. I take it back. I did call in one time when they were teasing that the Ultimate Warrior was coming to WCW, and it turned out to be like the Renegade, right? Like that was right. The prize. It was Renegade. But I dialed up the number. I got parents' permission, and I remember sitting there listening to Gene Okerlund talk the slowest he had ever spoken before. And then
gee, wonder why.
Find out that the ultimate surprise for the immortal Hulk Hogan was not actually Jim Hellwig. So anyways, that's my impression of the 900 909 9900. Oh, James H. Jackson says he may or may not have racked up $100 bill on that hotline without the permission when I was a kid. James,
I'm glad you're still alive today. That's all I have to say. I'm not sure Jay or I would be if we had done that.
There was in my local newspaper, the Press Telegram in Long Beach, California, for a short time, they had community numbers that you could call. These were completely free. There was no, it wasn't a 900 number. It wasn't even an 800 number. It was the local area code. And you could call in, and if you punch a certain number, like you would talk about your horoscopes, or you punch in a certain number and tell you about the latest baseball rumors or whatever. And they had a guy there who would talk about what was happening in the WWE and what was happening in WCW. And I remember, like, we'd get all the inside information, and then the next day I'd go to school and I'd tell all my friends this stuff, and they're like, how do you know? How do you know? And that's when my brother and I invented our uncle, Greg the Hammer Valentine, who's not really my relative at all. But we conned a lot of kids into thinking that I was kin with Greg Valentine.
You worked the marks.
I did. I should have been charging them 99 cents a minute.
You should have done. Hey, I need you to do something real quick.
What's that?
Entertain the crowd while I go get something.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
So entertaining the crowd, that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm good at. Anyways, guys, we'll get to the pay-per-view, or excuse me, we'll get to By Any Means Necessary 2 in just a moment. Thanks for checking us out. Again, we are here every Thursday night talking about NWA POWERRR. You can join us every Thursday night. And then every Tuesday, we do the pre-party. And that's to get you set up for Power. That's to talk about all the news and information that's going on with the National Wrestling Alliance and get you pumped up for whatever they're going to present on television that day. One thing that I can say that I'm pleasantly surprised about with this whole what's coming up for December, the pay-per-views, we're actually already getting some matches announced. Now, we know that the TV title match has been set. Scion will be Scion will be challenging Tyrus for the NWA Television Championship. Now, he's using his payoff from the championship series to get this match. It surprises me that he even has to use that to get this match, but that's one match that we know for sure that will happen at this pay-per-view. And then, of course, we know that Melina will challenge Camille the Brickhouse for the NWA Women's World Championship. So both of those matches have been kind of set into place. It should be, we should be hearing some more matches soon. We could assume, and that's a huge assumption, we could assume that there's going to be some sort of Nick Aldis and Tom Latimer matchup. We know that with what happened at By Any Means Necessary, we know that Mike Knox has made his intentions known that he wants a piece of Trevor Murdoch. So we'll see how that all pans out as that gets together. But without any further ado, let's talk about By Any Means Necessary 2. Let's talk about how the show kicked off, and which started off with a promo from Crimson, who was very impassioned, very fired up for this matchup. Of course, by all rights, he should be. Crimson feels like that Jack Stane treated him unfairly, that they were part of a tag team, they were a unit, that he carried that tag team, and Jack Stane ditched him when the going got tough. The word that he kept saying was accountability, and I kind of like that. His young son was there, and he wanted to teach his son a lesson tonight at the, not tonight, obviously, but during the show, that he was going to show Jack Stane what accountability was about, that he had to pay for his actions. DK, what did you think of this promo?
I thought the promo was good, but I thought the kid being there kind of gave you all the hints you needed as to what way the match was going to go. And so I wasn't overly fond of that. And then especially, we'll talk about the match and its outcome later, but, don't guess the accountability happened quite the way he wanted it to.
And then next up, this was kind of a weird deal for me. Every time we get a matchup that doesn't make sense, I just kind of scratch my head. Now, Tim Storm, they didn't advertise his opponent ahead of time, so we had no idea who he would be facing. But they brought in Jaden Rowland, who used to go by Heartthrob Jaden, who we've only seen twice before in an NWA ring. And this match, was billed as a no DQ match on the flyer, and we all kept wondering, why is this a no disqualification match? Like, this guy and Tim have had zero interactions. Why are we going with a hardcore match to kick it off? And that was answered early on the show when Jaden does attack Tim Storm, who was about to be interviewed by Kyle inside the ring. They changed the match to a no DQ match. I don't really understand, again, why they even bothered with making this a no disqualification match. It seemed like it was completely unnecessary. We did get some fun spots, like, Jaden giving Tim Storm 2 cheap shots. But outside of that, I didn't really feel like this match did a whole lot to make Tim Storm look great. I don't feel like it did a whole lot for Jaden Rowland. I mean, he came out, challenged this man to a no disqualification match, and then couldn't walk away with the victory. Again, this match just seemed like a waste to me. And the entire time I looked at Jaden in the ring, I kept thinking, he needs a manager. God, there's this annoying guy in the booth who they can't get to shut up for 1 minute. That might be a better place for both of them. DK, what did you think of the match?
I didn't care that much about it, really. This is one of those perfect examples of isolation versus story. If just in isolation, if this had been, here's a no DQ match, and so you watch a no DQ match, like you're flipping through YouTube videos or whatever, and so you don't really know anything about what's going on or what's happening. You just know it's a no DQ match. You probably say, "Hey, that was a decent no DQ match." I'm going to be a little bit honest. Tim Storm's starting to look a little bit his age, and Jaden, you know, he had to drop the heartthrob because we had the universal heartthrob. And since you brought it up, God, was this one of his worst weeks of announcing ever? And can they please, I'm begging, I'd get down on my knees, but they're shot, and I'd probably not be able to get back up. Can we stop the Camille and Austin Idol bickering? Velvet Sky, whoever. See, that's how important it is to me. I don't care who they are. I just know that they distract from the match. And so can we please stop it?
I thought that if last week would have been the end of it, I would have been like, yes, I want the universal heartthrob in the booth. And I would take him over Velvet Sky last week. And then this week, it was a different story. And it just got more and more grating. I mean, even a couple of times, Joe Galli's like, well, let's focus on the match, guys. The whole shtick of the
novel idea.
Yeah, it just, I'm over it. It's not really benefiting anybody. There's never going to be a true conclusion to it because Velvet Sky, it doesn't wrestle, and the heartthrob, universal heartthrob, and I almost called him Anthony Idol. Austin Idol doesn't have a female wrestler under his Idol Sports Management, so it's not going anywhere. So to me, like, it's the same thing with Galli calling out Nick Aldis every week. It's not going to lead to a match. It's not going to do anything for it. Just some of the comments that I just saw. NWA Gold, our pal Tim says, DCAM nails it. No more Idol and Velvet on commentary together. I agree with that. Terry McDermott says, get Velvet off the mic and put her in another role. I don't remember who said it last week, but somebody said, why not make Velvet Sky like the GM of NWA Power, of the NWA? And for that, I'm like, partially on board with, because it puts her in a different role. It doesn't put her on commentary, doesn't put her as an announcer, and it gives her something to do. Look, she's not horrible on the microphone. I just don't feel like she connects when it comes to Terry's the one that said that. I don't feel like she connects with the commentary. When it was her and Joe Galli and Tim Storm, it was still a bit much. And I don't know. I just feel like she's not really, to me, she's not really hitting it in the announce booth. And, you could put her as a manager, but at this point, like there's not even, the roster's not large enough to warrant having another female manager. They already have Taryn Terrell doing that. So I don't know. I agree with you, DK.
Well, he's still around.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the thing about the whole St. Louis show, right? Like, there's more matches, so we don't know. Maybe there are more matches with Taryn Terrell's team that we haven't seen. Next up was a promo with Murdoch and Aldis, and it was against Strictly Business. Their promo was, of course, about the match with Strictly Business. Aldis referred to themselves as two thoroughbreds, which, cute because they're in Kentucky. But the other part, which kind of was weird, is he started quoting Sam Jackson, and I am my brother's keeper, and vengeance, and I don't know the quote, but I'm sure you guys do. Anyone who's seen, what movie is that? Pulp Fiction. It was definitely just a ripoff of a Samuel L. Jackson quote. And I just kept thinking, like, is this new babyface Nick? Is this what we're going to get from now on? And am I okay with that? DK, are you okay with that?
What British guy does African American badass quotes? No, stay away. Don't do that. And it's just not believable, is what it amounts to. And overall, the interview or promo or whatever you want to call it was good. I didn't love it, didn't hate it. Just, outside of, Nick being a BMF. It was enough to get their match over.
And yeah, it did get the match over. I mean, they did a fine job accomplishing that. It did feel weird to me that Trevor was like, "Hey, Chris Adonis, you and I have unfinished business," and it's like, you're still worried about that? You're the world champion. What are you talking about? He did you a favor, man. He got you into that world title picture. Anyways, I want to point out our pal James H. Jackson said Velvet Sky was at the Rhode Island Comic-Con last weekend, and he was saying that she was telling people there it was only a matter of time before the WWE calls her for an announcing gig. And, I'm
sorry, did you say state of denial? Which state?
Rhode Island. I
sure it wasn't denial.
They let Renee Paquette go because her husband left. They still have Beth Phoenix. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Let's move on. Next up was Kenzie Page versus Camille, their second meeting. And this was a 2 falls, best of, 2 out of 3 falls. Thank you. And I'm going to say that Kenzie Page looked a lot better in this match than I saw her previously. And I felt she really did bring her A game in this one. But it's still Camille's world, and everyone else is just trying to find a place to fit in. There is no answer for Camille's spear. And I know that she did dodge the first one, but she ate the second one. The other spot that I thought was kind of cool was Kenzie Page took Camille out as they were fighting outside the ring and suplexed her on their ramp. And for women's wrestling, for the NWA, that's pretty hardcore. We haven't seen anything like that in a while. What did you think about this match, DK, and with Camille getting 2 solid victories in this one?
Well, they did the right thing with Camille winning 2-0. Because she's just not in the place where she should be pinned yet. And certainly not by Kenzie Page.
No.
Maybe if it was Mickie James, but they didn't want to put the title on Mickie, sure. That would make a little bit of sense. But Page certainly picked it up. She certainly looked good. She certainly looked brutal in the second fall. I do have an issue with the out of the ring stuff, not because they were wrestling out of the ring, but because at one point they caught the referee just standing there. It was a shot, and he was just kind of in the background, and he was just standing. And you couldn't even see all of them, but you could see his hands and everything like that. So he wasn't counting. He wasn't doing anything. So he didn't start the count. I mean, they've gone into railings. They've hit things, and she does the suplex. And he doesn't start the count until the suplex. Because then the idea is, will Camille make it back in time? Could she lose the fall by count out? Which always asks the question, if she loses the fall by count out, does that mean that she retains the titles? Anyway.
Yeah.
Even if Page won the third fall. But anyway, I mean, it was, for who was wrestling, it was an okay match. I'm not going to rank it up there, high. It was solid. We'll give it a 2.5 if you guys use a star system. I've seen Camille look better, but that's the best Page's look.
I think I would absolutely agree with that. Now, the other thing that I did, you touched on it, was the officiating in this match. But I feel like the rest of the night, the officiating might as well have taken the night off. And I'll point out some examples later of just how south it went. But I just felt like they stopped caring like early on. You know, I understand when you're trying to be lenient and when you have hardcore matches and stuff like that, that you get a little bit more flexible with the rules. But there are parts where this thing just completely fell off the wheels, and a really good official would have corrected it. You know, I don't know how it was booked, obviously, but it just felt like it got kind of embarrassing as far as I felt for like the referees. Like they just weren't doing their job flat out. And we see. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, it's just lazy booking.
Yeah, and we see that specifically in the next match. But I do want to point out, Sean Mega said that Camille is the NWA Roman Reigns, and I'm going to one up you on that one. And I'm going to say Camille is the NWA Goldberg. Camille hasn't lost a match. You guys are aware of that, right? She's been undefeated. Now, she did have a draw with Thunder Rosa, but there's no shame in getting a draw with one of the best wrestlers in the world. And no one has been able to defeat her. No one has been able to pin her or force her to tap out. I mean, she's got victories over legit Layla Hirsch. She's got victories over Chelsea Green. She's got victories over Serena Deeb. She's got victories over Thunder Rosa. I mean, who else is out there that you could put a name to that would have significance? You know, she's going to wrestle Melina at the Hard Times pay-per-view, but, you know, depending on how long Deonna Purrazzo is without the Impact Knockouts Championship, I would say bring her in too. Let her come in and challenge for Camille, because that stack of names that's starting to prop Camille up is getting bigger and better. And we do know, like, Camille has been wrestling a lot outside of the brand. She's been defending that title almost everywhere she goes. She's facing some better names, I think, on the independent circuit. Christy Janes is someone that she's wrestled against recently. I think she wrestled Maddie Wardakowski last weekend. I know she's supposed to wrestle Mercedes Martinez coming up real soon. So, I mean, Camille herself is doing, I think, everything she can to help bridge that gap, to get better, to be better. So we'll see how it goes. But, you know, she's also limited to who's available for her to wrestle against and who the NWA can pick for an opponent. I mean, I think this would have been the perfect time to have Lady Frost get an opportunity. We know Kylie Ray called off the show, but she would have been, to me, a better suited opponent. Even Genocide might have made a lot more sense in this situation, but that's okay. Kenzie Page did put on a lot better looking match than we've seen from her. So I felt like that was a victory for the NWA. But all in all, I feel like the match kind of fell apart, especially with the officiating. And that takes us to the post-match celebration. I guess it was Camille's birthday, which brought out Tom Latimer, her real-life fiance, and Chris Adonis with a cake singing happy birthday. And it was a funny spot where Tom demanded the audience to sing, which the fans complied, oddly enough. And then he told them they sucked, which I thought was perfect. Chef's kiss when it comes to being a heel. They brought Kyle in and forced Kyle to get down on his knees. And when he wasn't singing loud enough, Tom yelled at him to sing louder. I mean, this is the sort of stuff that's funny to me. Normally, I don't want it to see stuff like this all the time, but every now and then I think it's fitting and it works. DK, what did you think of that spot?
Yeah, I thought there was some good heel work in there. It's kind of made me hungry for a piece of cake. That's an unrelated side effect. I don't like when they use the announcers or ring announcers or interview guys as props and stuff like this. I think back to what Mark Lawrence said one time, and Mark Lawrence was both a ring announcer and a TV announcer for World Class. And he said one time when he came in that Fritz had a very specific rule, and that was the guys were supposed to treat the announcers with and interviewers with respect. And because if they didn't respect them, then none of the fans would either. And I think you kind of see that in that the announcing and interviews and all that, they're more comical jokes that, you know, it's hard to get over when it's not serious. And when you're trying to be serious, but you're still doing comedy, it's, you know, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so they need a lot of help. The one place they don't need a lot of help is a lot of the in-ring action. A lot of the in-ring action in isolation is pretty good, and they certainly got some talented people. But they need a lot of help with just almost like the basics. You know, again, it's very obvious that, you know, Billy Corgan kind of grew up in that TNA WWE light world. And it's like, we don't need 3 people at an announce desk, and we don't need bickering between the announcers. So we're never going to see matches that involve the announcers, hopefully, you know, outside of Tim Storm as the retired guy. And so I just don't know, but it seems to me they need to get that worked out.
Real quick, James, our buddy James says, bring in the ROH champ Roxy for the title versus title match. I mean, I would totally do that if we could make that happen, because, you know, with Ring of Honor peeling everything back, it might be a good time to do that. Our buddy Bobby Petito says, I'd like to see more of Jamie Senegal and Bianca Corelli in the NWA. We know the Free Babes just returned to Ohio Valley. Hollywood Haley J's teaming up with Miranda Gordy, and so that's happening in Ohio Valley. So real good for the NWA to come up with a tag team for Ohio Valley to take advantage of. And then back to our buddy James, he says, I feel Dave Marquez is the one who gets it from how to use the announcers and how to use the referees, etc. You don't see that type of stuff on a Dave Marquez production. I mean, not very often, that's for sure. And it's the whole bully thing. And I don't know, you know, I guess that's part of pro wrestling, but there's no way Kyle Davis is going to do anything in retaliation. He's never going to get comeuppance for that. Tom Latimer will not get comeuppance from Kyle Davis unless Kyle Davis decides to become a heel manager or something and bring in somebody to face Tom Latimer. That's just not going to happen. So I don't know why you keep pushing that storyline. Just stuff like that doesn't need to be there, especially as often as it is. You know, Tyrus is putting his hand on Kyle's head, and all of that just seems kind of pointless, right? I mean, at least to me.
Well, if it was one person, it would be different. Like if it was only Tyrus with only Kyle Davis, then you could kind of sit there and go, well, you know, okay, that's the little gimmick there. But
Yeah.
everything, I don't like it.
And then that brings us to the tag team match. And, you know, real quick, before we get to the tag team match, I did see it, and I forgot to talk about it earlier. Did you see that Lady Frost has signed a contract with Impact Wrestling?
Well, good for her. Maybe they'll use her better.
I was going to say, what's your reaction to that? For me, it's like, hallelujah, you know, she deserves it. You know, clap, 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 clap. But also, like, I've been saying it for weeks, she's the most polished wrestler in the NWA right now. They should be putting her in more special attraction matches.
She won one match.
Huh?
She won one match.
Yeah, one match, and it was under ridiculous rule sets, and the match itself was literally set to make her not look good. And then the way she won the match was not as good as it could have been. So congratulations, Lady Frost. I hope you find better success in Impact than you did in the NWA. Bobby Petito says that he would like to see Blonde Force Trauma, which is Heather Monroe and Ray Lynn versus the Hex, Allison Kay and Marty Bell in the NWA. I think that'd be great. I think, you know, the NWA certainly needs more tag teams. The tag teams are out there. They just need to bring them in. So, yeah, Bobby, I'm with you on that one. I just don't know when or if it'll ever happen. Terry McDermott says Lady Frost has to earn a living like the rest of us. Don't blame her at all. I mean, of course not. I never blame the talent for taking care of themselves, making the best business decision for themselves, especially when you're wrestling for a company that if you're not under contract, you know, at any point, Billy could start offering contracts to this talent. And anybody who wants to make sure that they don't sign elsewhere, he could lock up under contract. You know, I don't blame the talent for leaving, and I don't blame Billy for not signing people under contract. It's just that's part of the process. If you're not under a deal, there are 3 wrestling promotions right now that are giving people deals. So,
well, really, with what's happening with ROH and even MLW, I mean, at this point, he's better off not doing contracts because it's not really needed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Outside of probably champion contracts.
Right. And I think that's a huge deal. If you don't have your champion under contract, I just think you're doing something wrong. James H. Jackson says, no wonder people sign elsewhere at the first chance they get. And then follows it up with there's so much talent out there they can get at a good per match price, yet they don't utilize that. Exactly. I mean, again, like if Lady Frost is now no longer available to them, I mean, they're still like what Bobby Petito said, there's Blonde Force Trauma. Either one of those ladies would add to the show, even on a per show basis, even if they only worked a set of TV tapings, even if they only worked 1 match at the tapings, it would still bring an influx of new talent to the show. It would make the show seem more fresher by having these talents that aren't being really utilized anywhere else. But let's get back to the By Any Means Necessary. And not kicks off, but this match starts off with Nick Aldis interrupting the celebration in the ring with some fancy new theme music. Definitely not the old National Treasure music, not the Real World Champion music. Then we get Trevor Murdoch and his Southern Comfort music. I don't even know what to call that. This match, I mean, it was a good match. I enjoyed the match. It was kind of weird to seeing babyface Nick Aldis in the ring. I'm not accustomed to that. Some of the things I didn't like about the match was the officiating just got ugly. Like they ejected Camille, and Camille brought herself back out again to literally help Adonis reach the ring ropes right in front of the referee, and there was no disqualification. He basically just threw his hands up and said, "Oh well," and just let her stay there after he already ejected her. I thought, like, this is a point where your referees now look completely powerless. They look completely useless. At this point, just get rid of them. Put a robot out there to count 3 because this is dumb. That was my big takeaway from the match. And then also Joe Galley called a sky high made famous by D'Lo Brown. He called that a pop-up powerbomb when Trevor Murdoch did the sky high to Chris Adonis, and then shortly thereafter, Tom Latimer did the pop-up powerbomb to Trevor Murdoch. And I was like, well, that's a pop-up powerbomb. That's the move is. DK, you look uninterested. What did you think about this match?
You know, honestly, I enjoyed the match. I mean, all 4 talented guys. You see why, you know, these are the type of guys they would have around their main event. It's probably the best that Adonis has looked, honestly, since he did that. I
thought that too. I thought both physically and in the ring he looked all-time high.
Yeah, I mean, so it was the match itself, again, in isolation. Yeah, you know, it was a good match. 4 big guys, all of them are big. And, you know, we lose that sometimes when all of them are big because then you don't realize how big they are. You don't appreciate
their size as much.
Right. I mean, you know, Nick Aldis is legit 255, 260 pounds, depending on the day. And and he may have been the smallest guy in the ring. And yeah, the match itself was good, but like you, I got frustrated. And I got really frustrated when Camille came back out, literally grabbed a hold of which one was it?
I think it was Adonis.
Is it Adonis or Latimer?
Latimer would make Adonis, but it could be Latimer.
I think it was Latimer because he disappeared after that. And they beat up Adonis in the ring. But whoever it was, but, you know, literally grabs him by the hand and drags him to the rope. And the ref is like, what are you doing here? Why is it like, oh, well, you got him to the rope, so now they have to break.
Exactly.
What the hell?
Why didn't he kick the hand when he was touching the rope like in the old days?
I mean, you know, it's just... this was the senior official.
Yes. Justin
I
King.
mean, whoever. Just get that. Look, I am a firm believer in referees being shooters. I think that is the only way you can look legit. Even to a small extent, they're that way in WWE. You know, if the talent blows it and doesn't make it back in the ring, they'll do the count out. Or if they don't get their shoulders up, they'll do a pin. That happened on a house show where a title changed hands, and they basically had it where the former champion immediately challenged the new champion who agreed, and they got the title back on the right person. But, you know, if Vince, who's crazy, and even more so now than he used to be, knows that referees need to do what they're supposed to do out there and look like it's legitimate. And, you know, it takes them 5 seconds to do a 1 count. But they're at least consistent, and they do it, and they'll count you out if it takes too long. And so just crap. Don't make people look like crap. And that's what the NWA likes to do. Billy Corgan, I guess. I don't know. And again, I think this goes back to the TNA upbringing that he has. Our announcers are crap. Our referees are crap. Well, is that really the image you want to project? And so that's where my frustration is. Get to the match. Hey, it was a good match. Big guys doing big guy things in the ring.
Yeah.
And, come on, tighten up your booking. How many times do we have to say that?
And our buddy James points out, might as well have made this match a no DQ if the refs have no power. And that's, I think you're expressing the same dissatisfaction that DKM and myself had. It's like, why isn't the referee being more by the book? You know, the minute that Camille came back out and had an effect on the match, they should have been disqualified. They should have rang the bell. That should have been the end of the match. And then, I mean, guess what? Now you have a good setup for the pay-per-view. You could redo the same match if you wanted. But I just felt like, why? What's the point? And like I said, this was the second time that the referee just seemed completely useless. So I get what you're saying, James. I feel you. I feel like it was just kind of pointless.
Sean Mega pointed out something. He goes, WWE now wants the referees to short. I've heard this before. They actually want to hire short guys for referees so that the wrestlers look even bigger.
I mean, and I get that too. I do. It's all an aesthetic, but at the same time, if you want big guys, just hire big guys. That's what Billy Corgan did.
Well, and WWE Vince likes big guys, so
yeah,
most of them are big.
There was I'm not going to say which wrestler it was, but I remember being at a behind the scenes where Dave Marquez was interviewing somebody, and he did the whole, buckle those knees a little bit and squat down a little bit to make the other wrestler not look as small. And I thought that was kind of funny. It happens everywhere. James H. Jackson also says, I'm a big fan of wrestling, big man wrestling. They need someone to come in an advisory role and tighten up the ref situation and the announcing. I mean, like, that's what Pat Kenny's supposed to be doing, I think. Yeah, it just, they're little things that take away from the enjoyment of the match. Again, pro wrestling, there's an unannounced agreement between the fans, the spectators, and those in the ring that we suspend our belief in the reality of what's going on so that we can enjoy the show. But when you don't adhere to the same rules that you have set in place, the whole suspension of disbelief comes to a close. And it's hard to get into a match when a referee is not abiding by the rules that they're supposed to. They're not calling it the way they're supposed to. And you can call it a nitpick. You can call it, being overly critical. But when I see the referee eject an athlete from ringside, a contestant, a manager, a wrestler, whatever, and that person comes back out, there should be some ramifications for that. That match should have been disqualified. And if he did not disqualify the match, then at the very least he could have been shooing her out of the ring or bringing in more talent to force her to the back. There are ways around it. The fact that he just kind of went like, oh, come on. That doesn't do it for me. It really just kind of takes me out of that moment, and kind of hard to enjoy the match when stuff like that is going on. And then Sean Mega says Pat Kenny is one of those TNA guys. That's why it looks like the old TNA. I mean, that's pretty fair. So this brings us to the steel cage match. Now, this was a match that
do you want to actually talk about the finish?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. We did get the bulldog from Trevor Murdoch to end the match, and the good guys won. DK, what did you want to say about it?
Well, you missed Camille's spear.
Oh, that's right. You're right. So Camille back in the ring is going to spear, I believe it was Aldis, right? Now I don't remember.
Yeah, it was Aldis.
She was going to spear Aldis, who Adonis was right behind him, and Aldis just sidestepped her. And no, not Adonis. It was Latimer, because Adonis took the pin. Latimer was the one that got speared.
No, it was Adonis got hit.
That's right.
And then by the spear. And then Latimer, who had been missing for several minutes,
he was getting ready to climb in the ring. And Nick threw Camille into Latimer, and they spilled on the outside. That's how it was.
Yeah. Biggest pop of the crowd for the night.
Yeah, and like, look, that stuff is fine, but like, you already ejected her. Like, that should have happened.
They shouldn't have ejected her if they were going to do that.
Exactly. No,
it's one of those things that they could have solved I don't think it's a nitpick, by the way, either. But they could have solved the complaint by simply not ejecting her, because they ejected her for standing in the way. She hadn't touched anybody. She hadn't done anything. And they eject her for standing in the way, which is a weak reason to eject them. And then she comes down, she interferes, and they're just like, I can't really do anything about this.
And you can look at senior official, just making it clear that he is the top guy when it comes to officiating in the NWA, Justin King. And he basically said, So I just felt like that was in a vacuum. That match was fun. It was a fun match. I didn't like the officiating. I didn't like the double involvement of Camille. But all in all, it was a fun match. The good guys won. Obviously, the bad blood between Nick Aldis and Tom Latimer has not been quelched. And I'm sure I would bet you dollars to donuts that we're going to see some sort of no disqualification match or some sort of stipulation at the December 4th pay-per-view Hard Times that'll put Latimer back in the ring with Aldis to at the very least, clean this up, this put this rivalry either in full effect or finish it. One thing I did want to say about this match too with Joe Galley on commentary, and I hate the fact that they keep doing this, is they pointed out that Nick Aldis isn't going to use his rematch clause because he wants Trevor Murdoch to have a run as champion. And I'm thinking, so you're basically saying that title is Aldis whenever Aldis wants it. The way it sounds to my naive ears is that Aldis is being such a nice guy by not challenging Trevor Murdoch for that title. Although Trevor Murdoch defeated Aldis to win the title, they keep implying that it's Aldis's title whenever he wants it. Did you get that or no?
Well, yeah, I mean, and let's be honest, we kind of feel like that's the reality anyway, so they should stay away from getting that across as much as possible.
But they also did that with the Pope too, right? Like a Pope's big announcement, I'm going to let him have his time with the title. It's like, you guys, you can't just say, oh, I'm going to give him his time. No, man, like you still have to beat the guy to become the champion. It's not a foregone conclusion that just by challenging him, you win the title. So every wrestler should want to be the world champion. Every wrestler should push every advantage they have to become the world champion. And so the promo should be the Pope saying, hey, look, man, I respect the hell out of you, but what you have should be mine, and I want it. And I want it now, and let's go. And LFG, let's go.
So, I mean, the thing with Aldis is that they would never even have to bring up the rematch because Aldis is involved in the feud with Vladimir. So you wouldn't have to say anything because we know why Aldis isn't chasing the world title right now. It's because he and Vladimir. That's what they did when the Midnight Express of Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane lost the World Tag Team titles to the Road Warriors. But it was the next TV taping that Paulie Dangerously in the original Midnight Express showed up and busted Jim Cornette open and everything. And so that was their out. That's why the Midnight weren't after the Road Warriors, because the Midnight now had a new thing and it was personal.
Right.
And so you don't have to bring up anything because, you know, wrestling fans are just going to go with the flow. And this is something we've already seen. And so, yeah, to bring it up, and let me tell you, this is something, and we'll deal with it here after the cage match where we'll talk about Murdoch being attacked. But, you know, kind of one of the weaknesses of having a face champion is that promoters tend to book them weekly, and then they don't figure out why they can't get over as champion. And so anyway, we'll talk about that later. What about the cage match? What did you think?
Well, I did want to point out just two things real quick, and then we definitely will get to that cage match. Dave Scooby says, will Mickey show up at the pay-per-view to second Nick if he and Tom have a match? And I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, he had an insurance policy when he faced Cody. Now that insurance policy is matured and is no longer under his control. So he would need some sort of backup, and Mickey James would probably be the best person for that. And then Terry McDermott points out that Nick is the standing champion like Ric Flair or Harley Race. He will be world champion again. I don't deny that either. But again, the suspension of belief, like let me believe that Trevor Murdoch is the guy. And don't make me think he's the guy by telling me, oh, we don't want to challenge him because we want him to be the guy. No, just let me see him be the guy.
Don't Ronnie Garvin him.
What's that?
Don't Ronnie Garvin him.
No, don't do that. That's the last thing you want to do. This
don't sit there. Don't sit there and go, hey, we're going to suspend the 30-day rule of title defenses for Ronnie so he can face Ric Flair. Because what are you saying which, by the way, the stupidest thing about that was he still defended the title.
Yeah.
Every plaintiff just pop up and it'd be like, well, for that one time only, Ric Flair would challenge him, that night or whatever. But, yeah, I mean, what makes your champion look weaker than well, no, we want this to be a main event. We don't want to lose title before then. You know, that's the way it comes across. And so right now that's what they're doing with Murdoch. Well, we want Murdoch to be champion, so none of his top challengers want to face him so that he can be champion. That's stupid.
Real quick, shout out to our buddy James. Thanks for picking up an Alliance coffee mug. You can check out the merch store. We do have things like T-shirts, coffee mugs, all kinds of fun stuff. The merch link is in the video description. So thanks, James. Do appreciate that. This the new software doesn't have the connection to the merch store, so we don't get the notification during the podcast. So, but I do appreciate that. Thank you very much. Now getting to the steel cage match. Now this one was one for the ages because there was stuff in this that I'd never seen before. I love the fact that, you know, our buddy, you know, the rightful heir to that world's heavyweight champion, the man that should be challenging Trevor Murdoch, our guy, Jax Dane, he's the one that should be getting that world's heavyweight title match. And he was very smart in his attempts in this steel cage bout, none of which surprised me is that he stood in front of the curtain waiting for Crimson to come out in like true heel fashion, just waiting for that babyface to tag him with a haymaker. And of course, Crimson came out through the crowd like a coward, and he's the one that actually attacked our pal Jax Dane. This cage match was fun. I enjoyed it. There were some things in there I hadn't seen before. The battle before the cage match was a little bit off-putting, mostly just because I saw the same spot that I saw in the women's match, which was Crimson suplexing Jax Dane onto that ramp. And I just thought, you know, I already saw that. Why, you know, do something different. That was really the only thing that my only nitpick of the fight before getting in the cage. They did not ring the bell for that match until the cage was locked. I thought that was kind of a good throwback to the old school wrestling. The match itself was kind of what you thought it would be. Very brutal, very intense. I mean, one spot saw Dane try to spear Crimson and ran into a chair instead. I thought that was clever. And then, of course, Jax loaded up his fist and busted open Crimson. And it kind of looked like he got him the hard way. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it looked like he busted him open the hard way. And the conclusion of the match saw powder, saw rubbing alcohol. I never saw that in a match before. He threw rubbing alcohol into the open wound and into the eyes of Crimson, finished him off with a strong Western lariat for the 1-2-3. I was happy with the outcome of the match because I think Jax Dane is maybe the guy who maybe the next challenge for the 10 pounds of gold. D-Cam, what did you think of the steel cage match?
Well, the steel cage part I really enjoyed. I mean, that was just nice, big, brutal. I mean, and Dane did something that I liked, and it's kind of a lost art, which is even though the match was a no disqualification, it was kind of a one fall to a finish. You got to pin them or submit them or whatever. Inside a steel cage, he still kind of healed it when he would cheat. You know, he would hide his hand that was wrapped up. He would kind of, you know, first hide with the powder and stuff like that. And it's not that it was illegal, but it kind of, I feel like it just gets the fans more like, look what he's doing, you know, and stuff. And so it was, he did it, and he did it well. And yeah, I don't know if that was a blade or if that was a hard way either, but something sure got him. And I did not care for the fight around the cage beforehand because first of all, we don't need everything to be outside. You know, we can go a whole evening of wrestling without having wrestlers fight outside for more than just a couple of spots.
Right.
And like I said, it had already been done in the women's match. And really, it was more a throwback to Aldis versus Murdoch for the title because, you know, they did the same thing. They fought all over the place, but the match had never officially started.
Yeah.
And so it was, what's the right word? It was needless. But I'll say that. It was a needless thing. Put the two big guys in the cage, let them beat each other like they've never been beaten before. You know, redheaded stepchild, all those phrases. You know, anything that's politically incorrect, just, you know, let them clobber each other. It's clobbering time, and let them. And so it wasn't needed. So again, this is where we get goofy as opposed to good. So, having said that, I like the match. I like the use of the powder. I like when he hit the chair. I do like that it was a couple times I wondered if maybe Dane wasn't going to lose. I mean, I really didn't think he would, but there were a couple times like, well, maybe. And yeah, that alcohol, I'm not saying it's never been done, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
And so that was the criticism for that was Joe Galley saying he got some in his mouth. And it's like, dude, if you gotten some in your mouth, you wouldn't be talking on the mic telling us that. You know, so shut up. Please help the announcers. And, you know, look, I'm going to move a little bit to the overall show. But overall, I've really enjoyed the last 2 weeks where we've gotten a lot of good matches. We've gotten a lot of good wrestling in the matches. Not everything's made sense. The officiating has kind of stunk in a couple of them. But just overall is good. And you and I had this conversation offline. I said, what you can tell with the last 2 shows is that there's a difference between showing up for a TV taping and showing up for an event.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, this wasn't booked as a TV taping. This was booked as an event. They just turned it into a TV thing. Smart on their part. And so they'll have crowds back. They're making a big deal about going to Atlanta. Honestly, I was never overly impressed with their Atlanta shows. So I'm hoping that, you know, if you can take this you nail it for your pay-per-views. But you need this for your shows because it's the only wrestling we get. They're not touring. They're not having live shows anymore. You know, studio wrestling they were early infomercials. They were not to get you to watch the show. They were to get you to come to, you know, either the event in your town or the big show in, you know, Dallas or Memphis or Atlanta or, you know, whatever. However often they have
them. No, you're right. And I mean, we've talked about this in the past. Those early wrestling shows that were used as infomercials really changed the entire dynamic that if you go back and watch old footage, if you can find it, a lot of those old TV tapings, those old TV shows were sponsored by the local retailers of televisions. So it would be like if Best Buy was sponsoring the NWA now, because at the time, not everyone had a television in their home. And, you know, going in the 40s and the 50s, not everybody had TV in the home. So these shows were getting people to buy TVs. Like, that's how popular wrestling was back then. And, you know, it would drive, like you said, people to the shows. And like we said earlier, like having these mass attendances at these pay-per-views, you know, or not even pay-per-views, but like a Tuesday night, the Tuesday night in the Sportatorium or at the Grand Olympic or in the Omni or Madison Square Garden. I mean, these were regular things, some 30, 40 years ago, and it doesn't really happen like that now because wrestling just isn't as popular as it used to be. Sean Mega brought up a good point, and I wanted to echo it because I thought it was a good idea. He wants to see Jack Stane work with Pope. And I think that would be great because you got this really, heel in Jack Stane, this untapped resource as a heel. We've never really got to see a heel Jack Stane before in this manner. And the Pope is probably one of the best baby faces you have in the company right now. They can do some good business, I think. And the promos would be fun. The wrestling sure as hell would be fun. And then Willie Bowen points out that the match he doesn't want to see is Tyrus at a buffet. I love the Willie jokes. I love the Tyrus jokes, Willie. Thank you for keeping those coming. Sean Mega points out that he thinks that Crimson should work with Adonis next. And I think you're onto something with that too, because at this point, I don't think they need to go any further with the War King feud. This should be the punctuation on that. Now they should both be going for titles. And of course, the quickest way to get a challenge to challenge the world's heavyweight champion is to be the national champion. Nick Aldis said it in the past. It's been common knowledge that if you're the national champion, you are the #1 contender to the 10 pounds of gold. So you don't have to win 7 matches as national champion to get a shot at the title. You just need to be the national champion. So the quickest route for Crimson to become world's heavyweight champion would to be that national champion. So a feud with him and Adonis makes a lot of sense. And then that also plays into the fact that Adonis and Latimer have been the strictly business, they're buddies, they're best friends, and Nick is the odd man out. But Nick has always said that Crimson is his other best friend. So it kind of plays into reality, and it also helps elevate the storyline. What do you think about that?
I'm going to disagree on Jax versus Pope.
Okay.
And not because I don't want to see Jax versus Pope. I mean, I think it'll be good for all the reasons you're saying. But right now, Murdoch is lacking credible challengers, and we've already got people saying, oh, we wanted to have a run, so we're not going to challenge like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And so, let's go ahead and get into this part. So, now they have to bring in Mike Knox. And it's like, I will say I thought they handled this well. I was very glad to see that this was not on the show.
Yes.
The attack. Because the way they did it was Murdoch was going to be taking pictures with fans in the ring. Might have let a couple more get in there. I don't know how many did. And Mike Knox comes through, pushes things out, attacks Murdoch, beats Murdoch up. This is what I was talking about. The problem with having a face champion is that, he kind of ends up looking weak here because he basically gets demolished by Knox, even though he was ready for Knox to attack. I wouldn't call Mike Knox just somebody whose fans are going to ooh and ah over. I don't think he's somebody that, as the old saying goes, it's going to put butts in the seats or buys in the, on the pay-per-view. And so we had to have this really bad angle with this non-NWA wrestler at the moment come in. So now you're basically putting down your locker room because you're saying, the 2 credible guys we have don't want to challenge him, and nobody else is really credible. So, hey, we'll bring in this big guy. And I don't know how many of you know or care that, who Mike Knox is. Honestly, it does not move the meter for me either direction. I mean, I'm not less likely to watch because he's there. And it certainly doesn't make me any more likely to watch. And so to me, this would have been a better angle if it had still been Dane, if they had carried Crimson out and Dane was still kind of recovering in the cage or whatever, and puffing and puffing and full of adrenaline. And here comes Murdoch, take pictures with the fans, and you know, get out of my face, I'm going to take that title or whatever, and then have two of them go at it, where there wasn't necessarily even, where maybe Dane finally gets an advantage through his chain or something. But, you know, then you set up a guy that's wrestling for you against your champion. Dane's certainly a credible person, as he'll likes to remind us now, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah.
Who, I don't know if this was him or Kennedy or what's his name or Corgan, but you know, that he reminds us he's a former national champion, North American champion, world tag team champion. I mean, what that says is that this is a guy who should be challenging.
And to your point, I think what this would also be good for is you could push that Knox angle at the next pay-per-view. That could be the conclusion of the pay-per-view. If Trevor Murdoch is victorious, now you could have Knox come in and attack Trevor, setting up a match down the road, and then you have a couple of weeks of TV taping to lead up to the next pay-per-view. Or hell, you could have Knox cost Jack Stain the match altogether and have him go after Trevor Murdoch, and it still kind of sets up the same thing. James H. Jackson says it was, it's the ECW guy. And then Sean Mega points out that is Knox a TNA guy? Yeah, Knox was in the Aces and Eights, but I mean, outside of that, he really didn't get much notoriety with his time in either promotion. One of my only criticisms of the releasing of the footage is that it was shot professionally. It was all done on their high definition cameras and it looked beautiful. I think it would have been great if it was somebody's gritty cell phone and someone there at the show had, you know, recorded it and put that online. What's that?
The first thing they released right after it happened was cell phone.
And that's how they should have left it. And they should have let Certified Hustler put that out. Or this is pro wrestling, guys. Somebody not NWA releasing the footage, and then they could talk about it, and they could show the clips of that footage. But with it being professionally done, it just kind of, you know, again, suspension of belief.
Especially since they caught him coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, that it would be one thing. It's like, okay, you know, the cameras are still rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the cameras are still rolling or whatever. And all of a sudden, hey, something's going on. What's going on? Who's this person or whatever? And not that there should be announcers there to say anything. I'm just saying that's the way it should have been. You know, just more like, hell, you know, what the hell's going on? But it was very much, okay, these people are leaving. Let's make sure they go the right way. So we're going to follow them. Okay, here comes Knox. Let's back up. Knox pushes somebody or does something. I don't remember what. Okay, now he's in the ring. Now we're in the ring. There's a camera guy in the ring. And watching Murdoch get beat up and everything. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm with you on that. They you know, look, we'll stop beating this dead horse, but, you know, like we say, good talent, good in-ring action when they book it properly. And, you know, bad booking, bad storytelling, bad. I'd like to see Jack Stain versus Shane Taylor. I would like to see Jack Stain versus Shane Taylor. I would like to see Shane Taylor versus Dick Murdoch. I would like to see Trevor Murdoch, excuse me. Yes. I would like to see Shane Taylor team back up with Keith Lee and face any tag team.
I'm just saying this, you know, while Ring of Honor is in limbo, how awesome would it be? And this is just me forecasting. There's nothing written here, but how cool would it be to see Shane Taylor Promotions with the three of them wearing their Ring of Honor tag team trios championship, and they come in and mess something up at the pay-per-view. I don't care what. I don't care if it's the Tyrus match. I don't care if it's the national title match or a tag team title match. Just seeing those three dudes come in and beat the snot out of somebody and kind of say, hey, we're here. We're putting you on notice. You could use the Shane Taylor promotion guys in the Crockett Cup. You could use Shane Taylor in a one-on-one match against Trevor Murdoch, and I think that would be pretty damn cool. Hey, Thunder Rosa just stopped in. What's up, Thunder Rosa?
Hey, we were just talking about you earlier. And
we miss you desperately.
A lot. Still the best wrestler in the business. Best wrestler in the business. No qualifiers.
Future TBS champion.
Right. Maybe double belt holder. See her and Britt Baker go. Anyway, but that being said, you know, Shane, I would like to see Shane Taylor. You see, now you give it to me. Let's do some fantasy booking. Shane Taylor Promotions show up during the Tyrus and Don't Call Me Mystery Man match, and lay both of them out so bad that we never see either one of them again.
There it is.
And as if that wouldn't be good enough, then they, you know, stick around for a bit and cause mayhem in the tag team and singles area, where we get at the Crockett Cup. Everyone thinks Crockett Cup's going to be the next pay-per-view, and they do seem to be doing some things with tag teams. So maybe.
I think so.
So I think the main event at Crockett Cup should be Shane Taylor versus Trevor Murdoch, and I think Shane Taylor Promotions. Why can't I remember the name of the tag team for the life of me?
I honestly just know him as Shane Taylor Promotions. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they actually have another name, and someone in the thought would probably know who it is, and I just think you could get such a good show there. And I mean, well, I mean, I'm not even saying they need to win. I'm just saying, boy, put them in the finals at least. You know, if you want somebody else to win to get them over, that's fine. But, you know, or, you know, sign championship contracts and put the tag team titles on them, because I'd be happy with that too.
Yeah.
So, you know, with ROH on hiatus, and look, and I understand that Billy can't waste money, but I do think you'd be an idiot if you don't take advantage of having all this now unsigned, released ROH talent and not bringing them in for a couple of TV tapings, especially the way they do it. You know, man, I'm hoping he was on the phone like the day after that was announced, calling people. You know, I'm sure some of them are going to go to, hey, bring the Briscoes. I'm sure, you know, some of them will end up in AEW, but, you know, we've said before, AEW can't sign everybody.
No. And they shouldn't.
They shouldn't.
Let me just say this real quick, and then I'll let you take it back. But somebody said something to me that was so brilliant when it comes to AEW. And AEW has such an eclectic roster. There's so many like great wrestlers on there. But if you start replacing the average wrestlers that are in AEW with the top stars of Ring of Honor, then you don't have a bunch of superstar, or you don't have a divide of the top talent and the bottom talent. You just have a talent. Then you can't distinguish who's good and who's not. And
You still there? I can't hear you.
Sorry. Then the special talent doesn't seem as special.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we've talked about. There are people for all levels, and you got to have people at all levels. I mean, you know, look, AEW Dark and AEW Dark Elevation. Is that what it's called? I don't watch either show, but I know they can have lots of matches on those shows and get a lot of people through, but that's not. You can only have so many people on Dynamite. You can only have so many people on Rampage, and you just can't fill up everything, and then expect everybody to be on the top, like you said. Let's talk a little AEW for a second, because here's again, I don't watch most of it. I record it and watch Thunder Rosa. I watch CM Punk, and I watch
Bryan Danielson, and that's. I watch Britt Baker too, but Thunder Rosa is still my number one, and I'm not saying that just because she was in. I don't even know if she's still in, but when there's some things, because for 2 years they've kind of built to this Kenny Omega versus Adam Page, and then the question is, everybody's always assumed Page was going to win the title. There's some people that still think Page is going to win the title at Full Gear, but there are other people that go, no, he shouldn't win the title right now, because the idea of Omega versus Danielson for the title, or even Punk for the title at some point, they'd rather see that. Now, some people would argue the title doesn't need to be on the line for those to be big matches, and I would semi-agree, but they're going to be bigger if it's for the title. Yeah.
And so there is a divide among fans who follow closely as to whether now Adam Page should win or if Omega should win. And I don't know that I have a strong opinion one way or the other. But that's the problem if you bring in everybody who's supposed to be a top guy. Not everybody can be. And so I don't know. What are your thoughts?
So I don't know Tony Khan, and I don't really know much of the leadership in AEW, but I know that they're going for the kind of anti-WWE when it comes to their wrestling. Like, Bryan Danielson is still more or less a mid-card guy for them. They didn't rush him into the world title picture. I know he's had some like really top matches, but they've used him in opening bouts. They used him for buy-ins on YouTube. So I feel like AEW is looking to do something that gives the fans that feel-good moment. And I feel like as much as it's been kind of a wild ride with Kenny Omega being the AAA Mega Champion, being the Impact Champion, being the TNA World Champion, as well as being the AEW World Champion, I feel like this moment has been crafted to have a big upset, to have this big moment where Kenny no longer holds that AEW World title. And by putting it on somebody who is kind of considered an AEW original with the Cowboy, I really feel like at that moment, it's going to be one of those fond memories for their fans. So I feel like Tony Khan is kind of creating this moment where they're going to do something significant with Kenny Omega and having him drop that title to Page, even if it's just for a short-term reign, is going to do something for the fan base. They're going to be rewarded for watching. They're going to have that feel-good moment. Do I think that's the right decision? I don't know. I feel like if you could pull more mileage out of it, if you can get more money with a rematch, if you could pull more out of it, then you should. But at the same time, I feel like paying off the fans is always a good service. Not something you do all the time, but occasionally, I think it adds to the fandom. Like you don't want to give them everything, but you give them little crumbs to keep them interested and invested. And plus, it puts Kenny Omega in a position he hasn't been in, and that's the man chasing the belt for a while.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not really opposed to either way. I don't really have a strong opinion. But I do find it interesting that that is a debate that's out there. So I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Is it Saturday night?
Yeah, I think they do the pay-per-views on Saturday nights.
So, you know, we'll find out. Even as not a big AEW fan, I like to, you know, at least keep up with what promotions are doing. Except for Impact, I don't really care.
I mean, so wrestling.
Hey, real quick, shout out to our boy, Danny Limelight, Danny and Slash Boogie, new MLW World Tag Team Champions, and the belt is bigger than Danny.
Danny Limelight is on a roll right now. I mean, he's getting cast for TV shows. Like he did something with NCIS, so I think you'll see him on CBS next year. He's doing a lot of like little independent films as well. But the man is one half of the United Wrestling Network Tag Team Champions, and now he's an MLW one half of the MLW Tag Team Champions. Someone asked me, because MLW is now partnering with the Crash, and not that I'm an expert in the Crash Lucha Libre, but I've been to 2 shows now. And someone suggested to me, like, hey, do you think that they could do an MLW versus Crash tag team match? And I thought, that would be great, because then you'd have Slice Boogie and Danny Limelight, your MLW tag team champions, wrestling against Bestia 666 and Mecha Wolf, your NWA tag team champions, who also are the Crash tag team champions. But then also on the flip side, Slice Boogie and Danny Limelight are your United Wrestling Network champions. So in one match, you would literally have the pride of 4 different wrestling promotions on the line. And I think that would be great. And I would certainly be in Tijuana for that one if it happens. Our boy Dave Scooby was there to see it live. He said it was great. You know, and Danny Limelight is a guy who's been on the show a couple times. He's a friend of the show. I mean, he's getting all of his flowers right now. The Busted Open had him on today. Busted Open is on the Sirius XM satellite network, and they do a wrestling show Monday through Friday, actually Monday through Saturday. I guess it's like 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. East Coast time. But it's funny that Danny was on it today. They were thanking the veterans, and by the way, happy Veterans Day for anyone who served. Thank you for your service. But it was just really cool to see Danny Limelight get that opportunity to be on that show, you know, and I'm not saying that those guys are responsible for anyone's success, but, you know, they put Thunder Rosa on that show. They put Eddie Kingston on that show. They put Ricky Starks on that show. They put Danhausen on that show. And a lot of these names, once they've been associated with that show, tend to just kind of blow up, similar to this podcast. But I just would like to say, you know, congrats to our pal, and I wish more success for him.
I guess I'll do this one last thing, and then I'll let you wrap up. But, of course, I'd also be remiss in not pointing out, since we're talking about Slice Boogie and Danny Limelight, that my man, Papa Esco, he challenging for the United Wrestling Network Television Championship.
Yeah, that's happening. That's happening November 20th. And he and Max Caster, as well as Levi Shapiro, challenged in a triple threat match at the last TV tapings. So Papa Esco getting this opportunity, I mean, that means something, that this feud between those two is continuing. And how great would it be to see Papa Esco with that TV title?
Hey, I'm warning Levi, whatever. Is he still hanging out with that fat dude that wears the stupid hat and all that stuff?
Yeah. Still.
Okay. Well,
hey, Howdy.
I'm warning Howdy, and I'm warning Levi, my man, my brother, Viva la Raza. He is hungry.
He's starving.
And he wants that belt. He's starving.
We'll have to get him on the show.
You do.
I've been trying. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us. I know we didn't even spend an hour talking about another wrestling promotion tonight, and we still went up to 2 hours. So we're going to wrap it up here. DK, if the folks want to follow you on the social medias, how do they do it?
Twitter at DKMFWTX.
And anywhere else?
I mean, I have other social medias, but I do very little wrestling on them.
Of course, hopefully Kevin will be back with us next week. And we do thank you for checking out the show. Your patronage, your watching is all the gratitude we can ask for. But if you really do enjoy the show, please hit subscribe on that, thumbs up on YouTube, or follow on twitch.tv. We do appreciate you guys supporting this podcast every Thursday nights and Tuesdays afternoons, as we like to talk NWA with you in this NWA community. And then I do want to acknowledge Willie Bowen. Thank you for your service in the U.S. Navy. We do appreciate you, sir. If you really enjoy this podcast and want to support it financially, like our pal James H. Jackson just did, you could buy coffee mugs, T-shirts, hats on our merch link. The merch is in the description. Make sure you check that out. You can follow us on all social medias at the Alliance Blog, and that's, if you're watching on YouTube, great. We're also on Twitch, but we're also on Instagram, Facebook, I already said YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Tumblr. We're pretty much everywhere where you can get social. And I don't dance on it, I promise. I tell dumb dad jokes. And also, there is a giveaway, guys. We're getting close to 1,000 subscribers. In fact, right before the show, I looked. We're at 793 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Once we get to 1,000, our pal Tim from NWA Gold is going to be giving away his replica title belt of the NWA Crown Championship. That title is, first of all, it's pretty spectacular. Our pal DKM has his own version of it, and there it is right there, that beautiful belt. You could own a title that looks very much like that belt, but we have to hit 1,000 subscribers. So if you do like this show, make sure you're sharing it with your friends who are like-minded wrestling fans. Tweet it, put it on social media. Once we hit 1,000, someone's going to win that belt, and it could be you. So thank you again for tuning in this Thursday night. If you would like to listen to these podcasts on the audio version, you could do so. Just visit your favorite podcast resource, whether it be Amazon, Spotify, Google, Apple. We're pretty much everywhere. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you at the matches.